Hi, my name is Christine Muhr, and this is my final project for my technology instruction class. There are four components. The first one is a lesson that I taught with technology. The second was a new tool that my students used. Third, I observed another teacher using technology. And fourth, I learned a new program and analyzed the pros and cons. The lesson that I taught was using Nearpod. This is a tool that I've heard a lot about and have observed other people use but never used myself. My district provides a lot of curriculum and resources, so I don't feel I need to necessarily be looking for new resources. However, technology is an effective way to engage students and involve them. And so Nearpod and many others that I've learned about are great resources that I can use that work in place of or in addition with the curriculum that I've been provided. Some of the challenges that I faced as I was learning and exploring Nearpod included finding the right Nearpods that work for my class, that have the same curricular goals, and that the level was, perfect for, suitable for my fifth graders. So, for example, the Battle of Bunker Hill, it was just a little bit too focused on the battle and not so much the Revolutionary War as a whole. And the U.S. Constitution video that I observed, I could tell it was going to be too advanced and it was covering things that I don't cover in my curriculum. I'm still exploring the envisioning a setting of a poem. It was about a poem, Casey at the Bat, and that is a poem that I do work with in my classroom with students. They annotate the poem. I'd like to get back to this one and focus on the setting. We kind of did the meaning of the poem and irony, but I'd like to get back to this one to focus really just on the setting. So I felt that this lesson was relating to WIDA with the language for social studies. English language learners communicate information, ideas, and concepts necessary for academic success in the content area of social studies. And in this lesson, they listened, they read, and they wrote. So it relates to another ESL class that I took. In my ESL literacy class, I wrote a paper about front loading content reading with vocabulary. So, wanting to scaffold and build some prior background knowledge for my students, I found this resource on Teachers Pay Teachers. It was just a basic what are some key words that go with each branch of government. And I felt that this would be something that all of my students would be able to do, and they were interacting with the information. Below, you'll see that there are some posters that I put up in my classroom. A very good United States government poster, and then we were talking about it being, branches of government. So I made it just very easy to understand. And so the one in the middle, showing the various branches, who's on the branches, what are the main goals, and then a little more detailed for those who want to explore more about how bills become laws. So I do feel it's important to build vocabulary especially for my ESL learners, so that they are able to comprehend, so it's comprehensible input for them, knowing some of the key words and um, how the government works. And honestly, the kids learn about this a little bit in fourth, a little bit in fifth, then again in middle school and high school. And so each time they learn about it, they're learning at a higher level. But I just want them to have the basic understandings of the branches of government and the main roles. So now I'm going to show you the Nearpod that I found. It's called the Judicial Branch. It did review the executive and legislative branch within this Nearpod, which I thought was great. And I chose this one because there was just a nice variety of activities and videos. So this was the essential question that I went over with my class. So that guided our discussion. I did do this as a teacher-led lesson. So I'll show you in a little bit the results for these questions that my students did. I found out that you can edit and take out some slides. I just left the slides in there. We did this part together. There were a couple that we skipped just because we didn't have as much time as the lesson was designed for. I played the video. I thought the video was there were 3 short videos.
There are 3 branches of government in the United States. Each branch.
And they were short. They kept the kids engaged. So we watched those. This was a nice infographic. There were a couple infographics in here which I thought were helpful. And this matched the posters that I had up in the classroom. So that was kind of a nice tie-in. And here they were able to be creative and use tools to design their own visual. So I love it when different learning styles can be encouraged in the classroom. And we did talk about checks and balances. That's a really important point in my 5th grade curriculum. Here was another video that we watched.
Ever heard of checks and balances? No, not for a bank account. The checks and balances I'm talking about are for the U.S. federal government.
Like I said, that was another good video. Okay, so I'm going to get back to Nearpod to show you some of the results. Do I want to leave this? Yes. Just so you can see some of the things that the reports. Okay, here was the lesson that I did. And you can see different parts that we did together. So how much do you already know about the judicial branch? So most of my students knew a little bit about it. And the open-ended question was answered, and most of, people had a variety of responses. And this was like a Padlet. I thought it was very interesting that we could read, and I was able to, validate their questions and kind of use this as a discussion springboard as well. Here are some of the drawings that they made. Obviously, these were larger on the screen. We could see them. You're seeing just tiny little drawings here, but we were able to see each other's drawings, and I could click on them, and we could kind of look at those together. Okay, so back to the lesson itself. I really liked how, let me see here. Okay, we can go back. I really liked how students were all signed in. They were responding throughout the lesson on their Chromebooks. So this, along with the variety of activities, kept them engaged. One activity involved them sharing their questions. Like I said, that reminded me of a Padlet. And I thought that they came up with some great questions, and it was a nice change from having them raise their hand, sharing their questions. I thought this was something that English language learners would feel comfortable sharing their questions this way in class rather than raising their hands. The videos were engaging. Like I said, there were multiple choice questions. There were open-ended questions. We didn't get to it, but there was like a really long narrow infographic with so many great components to it. I had my students read through it quietly, and then after a few minutes, they shared the part that they found interesting, and that was a meaningful part of the lesson. How I would make the lesson better. I wish that I could have allowed my students to do some more speaking, especially my English language learners. There wasn't really any speaking during this lesson. I did notice that some Nearpods are organized that way, and they do prompt the students to do more sharing with a partner throughout the lesson. Okay, the next part was a new tool that my students used, which was they had the opportunity to create their own brain pop video. And I'd like to show you how this was broken down. I worked with my LMC director. We were co-teachers of this unit, and my students, the first week, this is Uma's sample inside of our Google Classroom. She built her background knowledge, learning about the Bill of Rights, and there were instructions, and then she needed to go to certain pages, read about it, and then answer where there was an X. She put her answers there, and this gave her an opportunity to understand the Bill of Rights better. So Uma worked through this. And then the next week, she took notes on an amendment that was assigned to her. She did the First Amendment. So her directions were to find out what the amendment says, to copy and paste that word for word. So she went to a website for that. And then she thought about what it meant in simple language, and she wrote about that in her own words. Then she looked into why was this amendment important? Why was it written originally back in history? And so she was able to find that information and include it. And then she researched a court date, a Supreme Court case, and she learned about how the amendment was actually practiced in the judicial branch. So this was her court case and her summary. So then my class, they learned about how to make a brain pop video. This was something new to them. So we provided them with step-by-step instructions, and we modeled it and had a sample for them. But this was really helpful for them to go back to, because everybody was at different steps and stages. And then as we met with the students to make sure they had all the components in their slideshow, these were the five or optionally six things that we were looking for before they were able to publish their video. So I'd like to show you how Uma's video turned out.
Dear Uma and Moby, what's the First Amendment? From a friend.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The First Amendment makes everyone practice their religion freely, gives everyone the freedom of speech, and everyone has the right to complain to the government. The government can't stop the newspaper from printing whatever they want, and the government can't stop groups that are forming. The cause or reason for this addition to the Constitution was due to the total control of the British, who had taken away the rights of free speech and the right to have public meetings. Americans also wanted to make sure that they had religious freedom, a reason why many had traveled thousands of miles to their new home in America. Island Tree School District versus Pico. The parents wanted the books banned from the library. They thought the passages in the books offended other people and their cultures. So, the school board removed them. Stephen Pico didn't like this idea. He thought the books should stay in the library. So, he told everyone, including the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sided with Pico's idea. They decided that kids could read whatever they wanted.
Okay, so I was very proud of Uma. I thought she did a great job, and um, I'd like to show you that this week in class we are going to be viewing each other's brain pop videos and providing feedback to one another using the tag format of telling something you liked, asking a question, and giving a suggestion. So we have this kind of all set up for them, and then each student has a slide where they will be receiving the feedback. So I'm excited about that, and it's kind of fun to finally be able to present something that we've been working on for several weeks. Okay. So my reflection on this lesson, I really liked how well it tied into our curriculum. It did allow students to do research, which we feel is so important. And I did notice that some students needed a lot of assistance because it was a complex project with lots of components, lots of steps to follow. I did like that students were able to use their own creativity. They've enjoyed Brain Pop videos for years, many of them, but to create their own was a great opportunity. And as I watched them experience this, I saw their knowledge grow about one amendment. And hopefully, this week, as they share with one another, they will learn more about the other amendments as well. They seem very proud of themselves, and I'm excited about the feedback that they'll be receiving. So, something that I thought about in terms of English language learners, I think that depending on which level of language proficiency students are in, some of the ways that I could meet my students' needs better would include making sure that they have an amendment that's relevant and understandable for them, pairing them with a classmate who they could either work together or if the student is unable to actually do it, they could just be part of the process. Providing leveled books and websites for my students to research and any text to speech options so they can hear the text auditorially. And also, I would love to give my students the option to create their video in their first language, perhaps even with a translation. So that would allow my students to kind of show off their skills in both languages. The third part of this final project involved my observation of a colleague. So, the colleague who I observed had three main components to her lesson. She is a fifth grade teacher along with me on my team, and we've been teaching colonial unrest and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And currently, she was teaching a Bill of Rights lesson. She's been showing Liberty's Kids episodes, which her class loves. She reviews information with Kahoots, and she uses TCI, which is Teachers Curriculum Institute, online tools for class instruction. So this is from our Social Studies Alive, America's Past Curriculum. So the Liberty's Kids is a narrative nonfiction set of videos, and it includes people from history such as Ben Franklin and fictional characters, putting them in like historical events and showing what the climate was like in the colonies, which is helpful for our students to understand, what it was like in its experience. So after showing the Liberty Kids video, Teresa conducted a Kahoot. All students participated. Some seem more engaged than others. And I have found that Kahoots are fun, but they do reward students who have higher processing speed. Those who struggle academically can sometimes lose interest in them, whereas Blooket, on the other hand, allows for more access to all learners. I basically think variety is good, and each class is different as well. Some classes prefer different types of games than others. So, a big takeaway for me was watching how Teresa used Go Guardian. She very close, and this is Go Guardian is something that I used during last year when I had a hybrid class or when I had remote learners. It was a way I could know that my students were actually on the websites that they were supposed to be on or working on what they were supposed to be working on. I haven't used it as much now that we are back in person, but Teresa uses it a lot and it seems to be very effective for her in her class. She really closely monitors that every student is on the screen with her, and she'll say, "Are you with me?" Sometimes she'll politely ask students by name. She uses a second monitor, an external monitor, so that she can use her laptop for projecting and her external monitor for Go Guardian. Teresa read the text aloud while students read it on their screens. I thought this was great for English language learners so that they are benefiting from both hearing and seeing the words. She also involved her students in a discussion by asking them to share what they learned when they worked on their a recent project on one of the amendments. She gave them a few minutes to complete their response, and then she went over the responses. She said, "I'm going to give you another minute, then we will check the answers," and this seemed to keep everyone on task. The TCI activities include images and graphic organizers that help English language learners make sense of the information. I thought one way the lesson could be improved would be to allow for a movement break or for students to share and listen to each other in partners. The TCI tools that she used during the lesson did remind me of Nearpod, but without the videos and without being able to read student responses throughout the lesson. Okay, the fourth component of the final project is when I had an opportunity to learn about Edpuzzle. I actually set up an appointment to learn about it along with my technology facilitator of my school, and she showed me some of the features. The purpose of Edpuzzle is to allow teachers to show or assign videos and add in video events, which are usually questions about the video. When searching videos on certain topics, the video length and the number of video events is clearly labeled under the image of the video. I could see some longer videos with 15 questions, which seemed to be more like high school level. I was thinking that 4 to 8 questions is probably a good amount for my class. Like PlayPosit, which I used to make the Declaration of Independence video earlier in the class, you can bring in YouTube videos and then edit and add in questions. Videos can be assigned and teachers can track student progress. It's very easy to set up a class with Google Classroom, which I did, and there's a gradebook which tracks student progress on every video with color coding. So some of the pros with Edpuzzle, you can import from YouTube, you can use pre-made videos, you can have prevent skipping so that students have to stop at each question. You can also use the notes feature, which is unlike Nearpod. You can actually put in a video event, other than multiple choice and open-ended questions. I thought the closed captioning option would be great, especially for English language learners, so that they can see the words and hear them at the same time. The con with Edpuzzle is that you have a limit of 20 videos without a paid subscription, and my district does not have a paid subscription, so once I get to 20, I'm going to have to figure out a workaround for that. I was comparing Edpuzzle, Nearpod, and PlayPosit, and I was thinking about how Edpuzzle and PlayPosit are very similar videos with stops and questions. You can assign them or you can experience this as a whole class. Nearpod contains videos but has more teaching features and modes of interaction between the students and the teachers. Thank you so much for watching my presentation. I learned a lot by working on this project. I'm excited to keep expanding my use of technology.